This is Off the Court with OG. I'm your host, Kristian Cuaresma. On episode 14, as always, we'll be joined by head coach and general manager, OG King Curt of your Nets gaming crew, as he takes a bit of time out of his Thanksgiving holiday to talk about what it's like to be the leader of NetsGC of the NBA 2K League. So come hang out with us over the next few minutes. But before we get the show started, let's give a quick shout out to our friends over at Zenny Blocks. Make sure to armor your eyes with Zenny Blocks virtually clear blue blockers. As gamers, we know you're spending hours in front of a screen trying to get your name out there for the NBA 2K League draft. So it's important to protect your eyes from any harmful blue light. Zenny Blocks will help reduce eye strain while improving your sleep. That way you can keep your eyes on the prize, which is making the league for season 5. Check them out at zenny.com/gaming and follow Zenny Gaming on Twitter and IG. Make sure to also follow Nets Gaming Crew on all social media platforms. That way you stay up to date. Now let's get the show started. All right, episode 14 of Off the Court with OG, brought to you by Zenny Blocks. Curt, our last show was a fun one because it was the first time we had players on, but now we're kind of back to just you and I. How have you been, and how was your Thanksgiving?
Hey, I've been good, and yeah, like you mentioned, the last show we had Doc and Shots on, and they'll be back. I'm sure throughout the season. When that time comes around, or who knows, maybe in the next upcoming weeks. But I had a great Thanksgiving here in Dayton, Ohio. Got to spend time with my kids, my brother. That's what's most important with me. I mean, really just the kids, the grandkids, my brother, and some close friends. Had a good time. Actually, went and checked out the Laker game right before Thanksgiving. Shout out to Cody Parent. For getting me some tickets. I had some good seats, had a good time enjoying that before Thanksgiving, actually.
You were at that game.
Yeah.
That was not your standard Lakers-Pacers game for sure.
Definitely not. I mean, it's been a while since I've actually went to an NBA game that didn't involve the Brooklyn Nets. So that was pretty interesting in itself.
Right. You got to see the silencer in action. Before we kind of really get things started, one of the funnier things I saw over the last couple of days on Twitter was this picture you posted. Originally, you're just trying to show love to famous GM of Heat Check Gaming and his merch, and then it quickly kind of snowballed into various photoshops of that picture being turned into like album cover art. I'm hoping we can kind of get these pictures edited into this episode in post with Strider, but how funny was it to kind of see all that unfold from your end?
I mean, it was comical. I mean, I'm the type of person that can laugh at myself. So the more humor, the better. But yeah, I was giving a shout out to Famous, who's a GM and head coach for Heat Check Gaming. And he has a merch line, and I've got a few. I got a hoodie and I got a T-shirt. And I actually specifically, I get merch according to the match with shoes. And certain shoes I only have certain apparel to really wear with them. And I'm not really big into labels or anything like that. Beyond my shoes, like I like certain shoes, but I'm not big into designer jeans and shirts and all that. I'd rather support my friends and stuff like that. So yeah, that was my sole intent. But Nicholas Gartrell, who's the head coach for T-Wolves Gaming, I sent his first graphic out, and then Matrix, he producer. I use a lot of his samples for the OG 2 Cents podcast and things of that nature. He had one that he put out there too. So it's pretty funny. But I mean, overall, I like the response of everybody being encouraging to my journey and me losing weight and trying to be a better me and feeling better about myself. I think right now I'm like between 85 and I done lost between 85 and 90 pounds now. So
damn,
you probably will see more pictures of me in the future, but I definitely look forward to more people creating content like that. It was pretty funny.
Yeah, it was awesome. Kind of kept me entertained on this end. And it's nice to kind of see. I think that's what's special about esports, especially as the 2K community kind of catches up with some of the other esport communities that kind of established themselves over the last years and decade, even just kind of that content off the sticks and getting to kind of know the person behind the game. So, and you do that better than, most, if not everyone. So it was cool to see. We'll hop into content now surrounding the team itself. Nets gaming crew headed into season 5. We're currently right in the thick of the off season. That off season schedule really starting to kind of churn and get the gears going to catch everyone up to speed. It began with the protection phase. The trade window was then open. Duke's Gaming held their expansion draft, taking Mario, Killian, Beezus, and now we're in this kind of retainment period, a slight lull before the storm, and when things really start to kind of pick up into the combine. Prospects everywhere, Curt, are giving it their all, trying to separate themselves from their peers, but they're also trying to prove, how they can help the team in any capacity, whether it's even applying for GM, coaching, scouting positions, writing positions. Everyone just kind of wants to be a part of that upcoming season of the NBA 2K League. As glamorous and as very much of a dream job as it may be, one of the things that have always fascinated me is the protection and retainment period, because coaches and GMs everywhere in the league are having these conversations with their players, and half the league ends up hearing the best news ever, right? You're just making their day, and then the other half of the league is coming out of these conversations very disappointed. Curt, you've gone through this cycle now a few times. You've always noted to me in past episodes how, along with trading players, this is like one of the more difficult and trickier aspects of the job. But how do you approach these conversations, and have you adjusted things to your approach since year one?
Yeah, definitely. And it is tough. I mean, like you said, half of the league is getting great news, and then the other half of the league, not so great news. It comes down to, in certain situations where, exit interviews, you kind of have preliminary conversations
Right.
about what potentially may happen. I think for me, I think what's different about, my approach, and it's always been that way, is that I'm not as public about, what I think or what I do for everything. And I don't feel like I have to be. I mean, I don't think everything needs to be, publicized, but I think when I talk with players, it's more or less they have a feeling that, of if whether they're coming back or not. And if they don't come back, it's not like one of those things where it's not a possibility that they may not come back, in the draft or anything like that. It's just certain players you want to see more from, and see how they may fit in the picture, going forward. And then there's other players, obviously, who established themselves that kind of right off the bat that they're going to be back. And it's not always performance based all the time, but of course that plays a big part in it. It's a no-brainer with shots. It was a no-brainer with Doc. I mean, and then obviously, unfortunately, our situation that happened prior to, those two were kind of, evident. And other players, I mean, it will be reevaluated down the line. I think I will shoot this out here, is that I've seen over time that play, some players in our league, they get comfortable. And I think sometimes, we want to continue to see that hunger that everybody put in when they first initially was trying to get into the league. And I'm not, everybody's human. I mean, things go up and down, and a lot of people have things going on in their personal lives that we may not always know about, or different things like that. So it's so many situations that, can arrive that can affect whether you get protected or whether you get retained or not. And and so, like I said, sometimes the public may, is unaware and may not know, so they'll have their feelings. You got players that have their own feelings about what they think you should do and stuff like that. But for me, forever, the decisions will always come down as what's best for NetsGC, not myself, not any in particular player. It's gonna always be what's best for NetsGC. And just to give you a little, I mean, quick thing for me is like I don't know if we're gonna talk about that. We'll probably talk about this later, but like trades and stuff like that. I'm emotionally invested in every player that I've had or every player that plays for me. So that doesn't mean I won't make the tough decisions if they need to be made, but it's human nature. I mean,
Right.
you see people on a regular basis for 6 months. You get to learn a lot about them, but then on the other hand, it's the business side of it that, I mean, you have to handle that in a certain manner too. So it does get tough because at the end of the day, like I said, I get emotionally invested with all my players, and not even just my players, but it's the people I work with in general. It's just who I am as a person. So I think AB put it best. I'm gonna throw this out here is when he took over. He said, Curt, I like you, and but that don't mean I won't fire you. So it's everybody. Is always going to be about what's best for the organization. So that's what it comes down to at the end of the day.
You think AB will appear on one of these episodes down the line?
We'll get him on here.
I think that'd be cool. But how can you not be emotionally invested in your players? Because at the end of the day, you planted your flag next to them on day one, headed into a season. And so, yeah, no, I can't even really fathom how tricky some of those conversations might be. I love how you mentioned, you want your players to display that sense of hunger that they had when trying to get into the league initially, and that kind of transitions us into our off the court mailbag this week. NetsGC wouldn't be anything without the fan base that supports it, so you guys can be a part of the crew and this show by emailing us your questions to netsgcmailbag@bseglobal.net. And Curt will do his best to answer the questions as they come in. Marquise, who's on Xbox, Curt, he asks, I was wondering if you had any tips for up and coming prospects who haven't been through this process before that could improve their chances of being drafted, or just tips that could help me improve as a player. So this is a cool question, Curt, because it's a bit of a follow-up to the one we asked Shots and Doc last episode. But whereas we asked them about the first step someone should take, this person is asking about an up and coming prospect. So Curt, in your opinion, what can help that up and coming prospect improve their chances if they're already in that bubble of players being considered?
I think what can help increase their chances is, and this is so, I think, underrated. I mean, we have a lot of players now who are creating content, who are giving tips, who have YouTube videos, who tweet out different things, on the regular. I think become a student of who has been in the league, who's successful in the league. And I think that's more impressive than anything. I mean, before you reach out to anybody or before you try to establish relationships or anything like that with it, like, study the game, study the players, study the league, like, know what's going on. It's enough. We're not in year one anymore. Like, there's enough information out there now that you literally can research on your own and learn things on your own before, trying to reach out to people and stuff like that. Now, I'm not saying don't reach out to people, but even myself, it's like, I kind of like try to study and read up on some things or about particular people or anything, anything that I'm trying to approach before I actually step to those, so I can let them know that I'm really like in tune and invested in what I'm asking and what I want from them in return. I think a lot of times, like, people, I'm sure I'm not the only one that deals with this, but I'll get DMs and questions, and they'll be asking questions that literally, if you follow me, you would know the answer to, or if you
Right.
follow the league, you would know the answer to. So you can't. I'll drop this little nugget, I guess, is like, you can't be serious. You can't say you're serious about something if your actions doesn't follow up behind it. Because if you're serious about the league, you're gonna know the players, you're gonna know the teams, you're gonna know the coaches, you're gonna know how the league has operated in all types of facets that have to deal with teams, the league teams, and the league in general. So make sure you do that first. I mean, hop on a league website, hop on teams' websites, like follow the team's social medias, follow the league social medias. Like it's so many different people who put on display for the league each and every day, or no, every other day, but it's quite frequent. But enough information is going out that you can be educated about so many things before you actually talk to anybody. And the one thing I want to say is that I never really I don't give out information that I don't follow, because I'll remember when I had my interview and my talks with Brendan Donahue and Daniel, who was with the league, and Aaron Ryan, who was with the league. I had a phone conversation with all three of them, and I was following the league, like, even though I wasn't really in the league season one, I still kept up with everything. So when my time came, I wasn't oblivious to questions that was being asked and everything like that. So you kind of want to prepare yourself as much as possible so you can be ready for when your moment comes.
Yeah, you gotta do that groundwork, that initial level of kind of scouting. It's kind of like applying to. It's exactly like applying to really any job. You want to be able to be somewhat familiar with the organization that you are trying to be a part of. And we won't go too much into interviews today, but I'm very excited for the future episode where we do that. We'll kind of line it up properly in terms of timing and where the league's at, because that has also been a very fascinating part of this landscape of the NBA 2K League. But last question, Curt, before we wrap things up here on Off the Court with OG, brought to you by Zenny Blocks. As we mentioned earlier, the trade window has been open, right? It's opened up the last little while. Can you, obviously without, naming very, very specific details and examples, can you walk us through how a standard typical trade conversation begins? Does a GM just randomly send a text out of the blue? Does it come through an email? Obviously we were in person when NetsGC kind of first started, and when the 2K League in its first couple of years. So there's that dynamic of it as well. But for someone like myself and many others who are on the outside looking in, and all we can kind of really rely on is playing NBA 2K and pretending to be a GM or playing fantasy basketball. But how does this kind of relationship work with other GMs? How do trades kind of start? And just kind of walk us through a little bit about that.
Yeah, the trade process is always interesting. I mean, you kind of have a sense of what type of value you may hold on that particular roster you may have at the time. We use Discord. I mean, league uses Discord. The coaches and GMs use Discord. I mean, obviously, a lot of us have each other's personal numbers and things of that nature. But it's pretty standard. I mean, if you have some interest in different things of that nature, and you see some opportunities out there that can improve your roster, I mean, pretty much reach out and kind of test the waters. I mean, me for myself, I mean, it wasn't the players that I have and wanted to keep here. They want to be here, so it was like, it's kind of like, no interest for me at the moment. I mean, the two players I have right now, I'm just looking to build around them. But yeah, it's pretty standard. I mean, you just try to see what's out there, see who has interest. Me, I'm just gonna speak for myself. Like, in times where I have had trades, I've never traded anybody who wanted to be here. Like, I've only traded players that didn't want to be here, and not necessarily saying that they didn't want to be here like it was a bad place to be. They just wanted to be in a different situation, and I didn't have a problem with that. And I think in terms, when they came to me about that, I tried to put them in the best situation that they could be in, but also put NetsGC in the best situation. And I think we did that. I mean, because obviously because of the position that we were in last year, and allowed us to get a player like shots and things of that nature. So a lot of trades went through to make that happen. And I think it's always interesting to me because everybody holds value for players differently,
right,
than other people. I mean, And that's going to forever be intriguing, because at the end of the day, most people only see a value in a player based off their performance, because you don't see the day-to-day operations of dealing with certain players, and how that goes about on a non-game play situation. So
Right.
it's like you never really see the true value, I mean, of a lot of players. Most people think just because they're not out there dominating, or they may not be playing well or whatever, that they hold no worth or no value. And I think that's that's one of the worst takes that I see publicly that a lot of people make, because it takes a lot to compete, and it takes a lot to win. I mean, it's not an easy thing to do, because if it was, everybody'd be doing it. I mean, and even with the league going into its 5th year, I mean, there's been some successful franchises, but and then you have us who's been in the middle of the pack, but then you have some franchises who've been struggling. I mean, and because it's not easy to get 5 to 6 players in a 6-month time period to try to gel together as one. I mean, some teams haven't even been able to do that in other avenues for when they have the same roster for a year or two.
Right.
So it's a tough process, but that's the part that's more challenging to me. But yeah, it's like I said, I never traded a player. I try to put them in the best situation, and also in turn putting NetsGC in the best situation. But I think that I want to say that the hardest moment for me was when I traded Nate. Like, that was like, I mean, because like we became like super close, and we're still close to this day. I mean, and because Nate is a great human being. Like, he's a great person. Like, forget the player. Like, so in making that move, but the one thing about Nate is like he's understanding, and he's realistic, and he kind of knew it was coming, and when we had to talk about it, it kind of made it easier, but it's still like when I hung up the phone, it was like, like I
Yeah.
didn't, I didn't feel good about it, but it's things that you have to do it. I mean, and I'll tell you, in my short stint, what's it seemed like story, man, years are flying by. Like, I mean, here I am I felt like I was just getting started, and now I'm going into my 4th year. But you'll learn over time that, I mean, you kind of you have to be numb to certain things, and deal with them accordingly and move on. And fortunately for me, I have a great team of people around me, and I have a veteran, in Alton, who's experienced a lot on multitudes of sides of basketball. So it helps from a mental standpoint. I mean, because that to me is more important than anything. Like he told me before, like, Curt, you're not always gonna win. Like, you're not you're gonna lose. I mean, you may have some losing seasons, but it's always how you handle it. And that's the same way I look at trades and everything. Like, and even my situations like suspensions and different things like that, is like, it's just how you deal with it, and how you move on from it. That really matters at the end of the day, because there's a lot of things. There's some things you control, and then there's some things you can't. So how you respond to it is always going to be key.
Love it. You dropped your 2 cents. Super insightful as always, Curt. Even before, we started doing episodes of this show, I've always wondered, how much of what we're seeing is just kind of really the tip of the iceberg. And then, from a more interesting aspect, like how much of that iceberg is hidden underneath, and you kind of shed that light on any of the questions I kind of throw at you. So I appreciate you as always. And I appreciate you coming onto the show despite the outcome of that Michigan-Ohio State game. Didn't go the way you were hoping, but again, appreciate you for coming on.
No, without a doubt. I mean, Michigan was due. So, just hats off to them. But somebody from the Big Ten got to they have to make the championship game if that's the case. If we if we can't be there, somebody has to represent one way or the other. But I guess now, I mean, of course, I'm gonna stay Buckeyes, but you know, we got Cincinnati that's in the hunt right now, so we'll see how that. It's gonna be tough for them, but we're definitely gonna see how everything plays out. It hurt me, but we just continue to move on and have to hope for a better next year if we don't find a way to get back into the top four.
I was watching the tail end of it, and one of the commentators had said it was the first Michigan win in that rivalry since the iPhone came out, like in the last decade. So and like you said, you AB had said you can't win them all. So we'll see where it goes from there. Right. But that wraps things up for us here on OTC episode 14. We've done 14 of these now. Thank you to everyone who took the time out of their day to listen and keep up with NetsGC. And Curt, again, thank you for taking time out of your schedule to do this with us.
No doubt, Kristian. See you in a couple of weeks. Thanks everybody for tuning in.
A big thank you to Curt for stopping by. It's officially one of my favorite times of the year, mock draft season for the upcoming NBA 2K League draft. Make sure you're signing up for any of the remaining draft combine eligible tournaments and hit us up through our mailbag at any time you'd like. On behalf of everyone over at Nets Gaming Crew, I'm Kristian Cuaresma, and this was Off the Court with OG.